Have you ever wanted to decide which of your cousins to marry? Have you ever wanted to imprison your sister? Is that ally's princess a worthy mate because she's got huge tracts of land? Are you upset because your neighbor is an empty-headed animal food trough wiper? So go to war! What the hell am I talking about? Crusader Kings 3, of course. Want to know more? Watch on and find out. My name is Thoraxe, and this is Strategy for Busy People. If you've got a few minutes, I'll tell you what to play. Paradox is known for insanely deep strategy games. It's unclear how they managed to crank out so many of them. Each subsequent installment is deeper than the last. I never played the previous CK titles, but I had heard that Crusader Kings 3 was much more approachable, so I decided to give it a try. I've been intimidated by Paradox titles in the past. A recent Designer Notes podcast interview included a mention that, in spite of how complex and crazy CK is, it gets a ton of playtime and people get really into it, mostly just stumbling their way around. Well, I can stumble around just as good as the next nitwit, so I dove in. Crusader Kings 3 does a pretty good starting tutorial that guides you through the beginnings of ruling a kingdom. But it gets overwhelming almost immediately. I ended up playing through the tutorial twice, not quite finishing it the first time, and then giving it another go. I picked up just enough to think I knew what I was doing. So, why pay any attention to the scenarios or whether they were easy, medium, hard, or whatever? I've got some Polish ancestry, so let's go try to play the Poles and take over Europe. Big mistake. One of the things that Paradox gets right in their history games is, unsurprisingly, the history. If you are trying to come out swinging as a very minor power that was overwhelmingly outmatched, historically speaking, you are going to have a miserable time of it. And I did. So I decided that, look, Vikings are pretty cool, so let's do one of the Viking scenarios that's tagged as easy. Well, that first attempt didn't quite work out either. I tried to follow the same guidelines as had been set up in the tutorial. Wield my influence, make marriage arrangements with my progeny, take a wife, try to use my advisors, and, most importantly, kick some ass. Well, the funny thing about that last part is you don't really do a lot of warring in the tutorial, and it's really quite easy to overextend yourself. When you take over an area, they're not exactly thrilled to have you ruling. I ended up being able to grab a bunch of neighboring counties, but unrest slowly built, and ultimately the peasants formed a faction and revolted. So, of course, rather than trying to figure that out, I decided to start over. While the starting situations for most of the kingdoms around you are the same when you choose the same starting scenario, there is a little bit of randomness scattered about here and there. For example, early on in my second attempt, my son got leprosy, which made him ineligible for a bunch of stuff. Darn. I then wasted some gold bringing a lady into my court who I then ended up not wanting to sleep with. Even though the Norse could have multiple concubines, this expensive lady would have ended up creating progeny with congenital defects. That's a bummer. Yet another start, and yet another playthrough, and yet another series of not really being able to figure out what was going on. But enjoying the process in a weird way. Oh, the Vikings should do a lot of raiding and not explicitly warring, but that has its own challenges that I needed to figure out. And as I kept restarting and replaying and learning new things, I realized that this cycle would be endless. And that scared me because the endless depth in cycling didn't actually scare me. I almost sort of was looking forward to it. Reading Reddit articles about different techniques and strategies, reading wikis, learning medieval succession law, figuring out all the intricacies of your court and figuring out all the levers you could pull there, figuring out the intricacies of plotting against your neighbors and the lever you could pull there, figuring out how to take over the right neighboring counties to build duchies, to build kingdoms to add, and the levers you could pull there. There's really almost no end to the depth and how deep you can go. This is a game that rewards patience above all else. The only rush is to ensure that you have a supply of heirs that can take over the kingdom successfully when you die. Because there really isn't a quote-unquote you in this game. There is your kingdom and its bloodline. If your current king dies and there's a valid succession possible, you just start playing as that next person. And that's kind of cool. Before I give my final verdict, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to share with your friends. Agree with me, disagree with me, or want to see other content? Let me know in the comments below. Want to try this game yourself? Check out my humble affiliate link below. And if you want to support me in making more of these videos, become a patron on Patreon. Your support really makes a difference. The final verdict. I didn't stop playing this game because I got frustrated at it. I stopped playing it because I didn't want to fall into a bottomless vortex with it. This is a game that you could play for thousands of hours. There are tons of expansions offering new starting scenarios, new kingdoms, and new options. This is a game that could be really, really fun if you give it the time and are willing to learn, and most importantly, are willing to fail. And possibly even more importantly, are willing to watch failure happen slowly just for the sake of learning from it. On my trademarked 3-point score scale of avoid, meh, and I forgot to eat, I absolutely could have gotten lost in this game and forgotten about food, water, nay, my very survival. Just one more month, please?